Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Limit Breakdown, where we break down the latest in movies, TV, and everything going on in entertainment. Today we're doing a little bit of a change of pace. We're actually going to be covering our first video game
Series.
Yeah.
Coming next.
In light of the new HBO show Last of Us that's been announced for next year.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we would cover the game that it's based on. So this is The Last of Us Part 1 officially. So stay tuned after the intro, and we'll kick into our first video game review for The Last of Us Part 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to our breakdown of The Last of Us Part 1 video game. So, as Mick said earlier, this is going to be our review of the Part 1 video game that is the original basis of the TV show that's going to be coming out next year in 2023. As usual, what did you think?
Well, let's start off by giving a recap of the story before we give into our thoughts. So the whole basis for The Last of Us is a post-apocalyptic world.
Mm-hmm.
There is this fungus that takes over. It's a nice little twist on the general zombie formula, but it's a fungus, cordyceps, which is based on a real-life thing. If you don't believe me, Google it. It's absolutely terrifying. But yeah, this cordyceps fungus on steroids takes over the world, starts affecting people's brain, causing massive amounts of violence, and basically a whole zombie apocalypse situation. Story kicks off a couple days after the initial outbreak with the protagonist Joel. It kind of culminates with his neighbors getting infected and attacking them. He tries to evacuate with his daughter. And he tries to go meet up with his brother who lives somewhere in that town. I don't remember if they specified exactly where it was that they were when they started. But, it's typical small town USA. And people are fleeing for their lives. There's explosions and fires and everything going on. And they manage to get to a place where they see some soldiers. And they think, the military's coming in to help us, and unfortunately for them, this was actually a cleanup crew, and they had been ordered to basically execute everyone that was infected, which basically meant that they weren't going to ask any questions. Joel's daughter ended up being the first casualty of the game as she was shot by one of these soldiers. Joel survived barely because his brother came in and killed a soldier right before he could kill Joel. So fast forward sometime into the future, everybody is down to survival mode, and we come to meet our
governments fallen down, factions have come up, regencies have come up, things like that.
Yeah, the cities are now under martial law, being controlled by the military in certain parts, being controlled by other paramilitary groups in other parts, and Joel for the most part and his brother have kind of been getting by as kind of doing whatever they can, smuggling things, and because of their reputation as well-known smugglers, they are contacted by a group of paramilitary group known as the Fireflies. And so they had a job that they were supposed to do that got botched, and in order to make it up to the Fireflies, the leader of them asked them to transport a person to a medical facility. Now, none of this, normally they wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but they got stopped by some actual military forces and they got tested for infected, and that's when they discovered that Ellie, our other protagonist, was actually infected, and they were about to kill her when she revealed that her wound was actually 3 weeks old, which is unheard of because at this point it takes about 3
days for the infection to take over you, and you become
completely
fungi.
So the point being is that she is possibly immune, and the reason that the Fireflies want her is because they are going to see if they can use her immunity to create a cure. So now it becomes a mission to get this little girl over to the Fireflies.
On the other side of the country.
On the other side of the country, yeah. So Joel and Ellie go through quite an ordeal, and it all culminates at the hospital at the end of the game, where Joel finds out from the Fireflies that the cordyceps have infected her brain, and the only way to come up with a vaccine is to basically kill her and remove her brain. And
to create the vaccine
from
her brain,
basically
from the proteins of her brain, and in order to do that, they obviously have to cut the brain out.
And at this point, throughout the course of her journey, his journey with her, they've been through so much that she's become basically a surrogate daughter for Joel.
Yeah.
And Joel makes the decision at that point that even for the sake of humanity, he's not going to sacrifice her.
Yeah.
And so he kills the doctor that's going to operate on her. Leaves the remaining Fireflies in quite disarray, and the game ends with Ellie waking up from a coma, from what do you call
anesthesia?
The anesthesia, and he tells her a lie, saying that there were other people with the cure, they didn't need you.
Yeah.
And the game kind of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So a lot of emotions. This story is very powerful for me as an avid gamer. I feel like this was probably the best game of the PlayStation 3 generation.
Yeah.
It was towards the end of the PlayStation 3's life cycle. It also got remastered into a PlayStation 4 and now remade into a PlayStation 5 game. And that's not something that you typically see with a game, especially considering the game came out in 2013. So, the story is very powerful. So before we get into all the intricacies, let's start off with your initial thoughts.
So, as you said, I particularly play games for the stories. That's one of my favorite genres, right? So I generally like games that have a heavy story mode, single player mode. That's my favorite. And this, by far, I would place in like my top 5 games of all time.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah.
Right. Right off the bat, the opening scene, you already feel the connection of the father and the daughter, Joel and Sarah. And then in the opening scene, or in the opening few chapters, technically
the first chapter,
first chapter, she dies, and you're like, what the hell?
And she dies in his arm, and it's such an unexpected thing because you start off the game playing as the little girl.
Yeah.
So you're already it's already kind of human nature to be protective of children and everything, and then they use the tool of having you play as the little girl without really being able to defend yourself against these things. And then in that first chapter, and the way that she died was so tragic because they thought they were fleeing from terror. They thought they had finally gotten to a place where someone could help. And then she's executed, basically.
Yeah. And I was like, well, dang, this game's going to be insane. Moving forward, same thing. It kept that pace of, it had a great storyline, and then you're like, okay, this is what I feel how this game is going to go, and then curveball this way. Every time I'm like, this is what's going to happen, curveball this way. And I think and it wasn't in a bad or negative way, right? So sometimes games will throw a story that's just like, you're like, that's unnecessary curveball. And this one, I felt like it was really, really well done. And every character that either died or had, an alternative motive or something, I was like, it makes sense.
I feel like the character work done for this particular game was what made the story so compelling. You don't get a lot of time with a lot of different characters, but the time that you do get is meaningful and substantial.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be terrible with the names, but there's a female companion that Joel has at the beginning of the game that they've obviously worked together through several
Yep.
moments, and you
Yep.
don't get a whole lot of chapters with her, but she pushes you to a certain point, and then you come to discover that she's been bitten.
Mm-hmm.
And then the army's coming after you, and she basically does a one-man showdown against a group of like 10, 15 guys,
Yeah.
and gives you just enough time to get away.
I think Tess was her
Tess,
name.
that's what
Tess.
that was her name. Yeah, Tess. So she was a very compelling character in those few short chapters, and you can feel that connection. Like you can feel
Joel and Tess had been working a long time. You know, they knew each other. They knew how they react to different scenarios. They're like, okay, I see what's going on. They work well together as a team. And then when that scene happens, you're like, dang, man, already.
So this game was created by a guy named Neil Druckmann, and he has his fans for the different work that he's done, but I feel like this is one of his crowning achievements. Just the way that the story was weaved, and for me, it all hinged on that relationship between Joel and Ellie.
Yeah,
and they go through this adventure of him trying to save her. He obviously has that lingering regret over his daughter having died.
Yeah.
But all of this is so overwhelming, and I never got the picture that Joel was a particularly noble character.
No,
like
not at all.
He was, the way that he was painted, he was a guy that was in survival mode.
Yeah.
He did what he had to do, and he had no regrets about it. There was a scene in the game where they're coming across some bandits, and this guy jumps out of the car and goes, "Please help me, stop, I'm hurt." And Joel just runs him down. And afterwards, Ellie is like, "You killed that guy. Like you didn't stop." He goes, "He probably wasn't even hurt. Like he was probably just trying to get us to stop the car."
Yeah.
And Ellie goes, "How do you know that?" He's like, "Because I've done stuff like that."
Yeah.
And so it just kind of shows you the kind of world that they live in. Like it's really survival of the fittest.
I agree. I do agree. Joel was never painted as like the perfect being. He does what he does to survive. And I think as the show or as the game progresses, there are certain characteristics of his that change. For example, at the beginning, he was very hesitant on befriending Ellie. He was more like, okay, I'm going to protect you as a daughter, but I'm not going to trust you to do anything. Like, you do what I say and you just stay back. As it progresses. And Ellie being the smart mouth that she is, which I loved. I think that dynamic of her being just instead of, I would have not liked it if she was just like a sissy, like, oh my God, help me type. I liked the type of person she was, a very smart ass type person.
Yeah.
As the show progresses,
I think you kind of have to be to grow up in that world too. And you don't get a lot of her backstory until later on in the game, but you can already tell that she is a product of this world. Yeah. She has been hardened, and she's wary of everyone. One of the turning points for them was when they got to Joel's brother's camp. Yeah. And his brother had they had made a camp close to an electric plant. And they managed to build a town around it and have running water and electricity and almost somewhat of a normal society. And, his brother had previously been a firefly. Yeah. So that's the whole reason why they went to him.
To get more information.
To get more information and see how to get Ellie over to the fireflies, because they thought that was, what needed to happen. And there's a very key scene where where Joel is basically trying to get his brother to take her the rest of the way, and him basically go back to where he had been, and Ellie's sitting there, telling him, "Hey, don't tell me that it's gonna be all right. Don't tell me that I'm gonna be all right with you when everyone that's ever been with me has either left me or died, except for
I remember
you."
Them. Yeah, that was a very, very powerful scene. I was like, ugh.
This game and this series has a way of both positively and negatively reaching and grabbing that emotional response from me.
And then twisting it.
And you know,
my heart and my tears were crying.
There were so many key points in this game. At one point, when you're making your way through the winter on your way to Seattle.
Oh man, that whole chapter when they're in the snow area, in the winter area. Specifically when Joel gets when they're in the mall, which I like the mall part. Joel gets hurt, and the whole winter Ellie has to take care of him.
Yes.
That entire chapter
sequence
I loved, because now you get to play for as Ellie, I think for the first time, but fully. And then just the way it's more of, instead of going out and exploring, you kind of like, you're kind of gathering and kind of, you know, I loved every bit of it. And then you meet those other two characters as well. It was insane. It was awesome.
Yeah, so they had gone to a university where the Fireflies were supposed to be at, and then they found out that the Fireflies were no longer there. They had left to a place in Seattle, and so they were no longer there. In the process, there were some bandits in the area. Joel gets into a fight and he falls off, I think, like the second or third floor.
It was the second floor of the mall.
Yeah, and he gets like brutally injured.
Yeah, he gets impaled.
Yeah.
Things.
So Ellie has to like drag him out, and she finds a spot to hide, and he's like barely clinging on to life, and she's scurrying, and then the guys that you mentioned, I think they end up being cannibals, don't they? I'm pretty sure they were cannibals.
Yes.
And so at first they kind of play the friendly face. They even help you fight a horde of infected, and then you come to find out that they were part of the bandit group that attacked them at the university to begin with.
Yeah.
And so it's this whole thing. You don't really see what's happening with Ellie. Oh, one thing that I did think was pretty boss was just, she is surrounded by adults. She is, probably thinking she's gonna die, but this little girl is talking so much trash.
Oh man!
Oh, God.
Even when she was so sick. So right after that, they're like, yeah, there's a dude traveling with a little girl. It's you, and they capture her, and she's in jail. Instead of pleading for her life or making a bargain, she's like, shove it up here. And I was like, dang, she does not care. She's talking smack. That's to the last of her breath.
Yeah.
So I thought that dynamic was hilarious.
The biggest thing for me is, like I said, the emotional beats that this game touches at, and then we could probably spend hours just talking about the intricacies of the game, but for me it all boils down to the end when Joel makes that decision. And it's one of those things where, like, you can think about it from a moral perspective, or you can think of it from the perspective of one man. And it's like, morally, would sacrificing one girl for the sake of humanity. But then, Joel at the same time is looking at it as like, yes, this could save mankind, or she could just die and it could all be for nothing. And to him, I think that was not worth the risk. Like, he was not willing to sacrifice her without knowing exactly what was going to come of it. Even if it did mean saving humanity, it would be without her. And I don't think that at that point he could really face that loss after everything that he had lost to that point. And it's so rare in storytelling, not just in video games, but in storytelling in general, where you get such high stakes.
Yeah.
Where it's like you look at that situation and, like, I mean, he killed the doctor.
It's more of as a lose-lose situation.
And then at the end of it, he lies to her, which she eventually finds out the truth, but he's got to deal with her survivor's guilt, and it's just, it's such a complicated decision on the surface, and I mean, it's an easy decision on the surface, but it's really so much more complicated than just, oh, I'm not going to sacrifice her, because he literally gave up potentially finding a cure for humanity.
Yeah.
To save her.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that aspect is why this game is rated to me in my top 5. Like that last decision, everything that happened before, fantastic. That last decision of him and the how do I say, you could see it, even though it's CGI, you can still see it in their face.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can feel it, the way they do it, and I think they did a phenomenal job.
The motion capture, even considering this was 2013, the motion capture was able to capture the emotion and the feelings that the actors were portraying.
Yeah.
Like, it was just such good performances. And I give all credits to Neil Druckmann for writing such a fantastic story, and then also for, like, it could have been very easy for him to write the stereotypical happy ending. They get to the fireflies,
they extract
it, she gets a cure, all this and that, but no.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't get that. There was no resolution to that, and then it very much left it with no resolution to them, because now he lied to her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's a very dark ending to a very dark story.
Yeah, I agree. But still, overall, I love that series. I love the game so much so. Well, people love the game that originally the game was called The Last of Us, and it got so popular. It won
It won Game of the Year.
A multitude of different other awards.
Mm-hmm.
And then sparked a sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, making The Last of Us. They changed the name to officially be called The Last of Us Part 1. Which we'll do Part 2 on a different day.
Yeah. Originally we had thought about combining and reviewing both games, but I felt, we both felt that each game merited its own conversation, because...
And I think the dynamic of the two games is very different as well, so we'll compare different times.
But yeah, kind of winding down a little bit, I think for me, one of the main reasons this game, like you said, is one of the top games I've ever played, is that compelling story in any medium, whether it be movies, TV, books. Like, for me, this story still stands out. I recently replayed the game right before Last of Us Part 2 came out. And even though it's been so many years, like, the gut punches are still just as vibrant. The emotional beats, it's just...
The scariness of
God, the clickers. Yeah, we didn't even touch, like, the emotional baggage that this game is able to handle, and then on top of that you throw in the survival horror aspect of it. The clickers are just absolutely, like, terrifying, and it's like a Pirates of the Caribbean with Davy Jones, where his people were, like, slowly becoming part of the ship and, like, covered in fungus and all that, but now these fungi people are man-eating monsters and stuff. And I mean, they had, various different types and stuff.
Yeah,
so
it was insane.
And then the craziest thing is that it's based on a real thing. Like,
yeah, real fun.
Right, once again, cordyceps, terrifying.
Not a fun guy.
But you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. Overall, love the game. If anyone has not played it still, I highly recommend playing it. Probably one of the best games out there. Story's compelling. I actually even like the gameplay. We didn't mention all that, but even the gameplay itself. Sometimes the mechanics of a game can ruin it, but this has very smooth mechanics.
The fighting mechanics on it were great. switching between weapons was pretty easy. For the remake, actually, they some of the changes that they made for Last of Us Part 2, they retrofitted into Part 1 to make the experience a little bit smoother. So yeah, definitely, if you've never played the game before, Last of Us Part 1 on PS5 or Xbox, definitely worth the playthrough.
I don't think it's on Xbox. I think.
It is a PlayStation exclusive.
PlayStation exclusive.
Sorry, it is a PlayStation exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, PlayStation exclusive. I believe it is on PC though.
It is on PC.
So available on PlayStation and PC.
Yeah.
PS and PC. But thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you guys next time. We're gonna have more content coming up soon.
Catch us on all major podcast platforms. Peace out.